Humans of the cardboard! Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are ranting about Duelist Pack Duelists of Pyroxene. I have some pretty significant problems with this set overall that we're going to be going through today and comparing to some of the past ones that I thought were on a really good track, and then it kind of fell off a little bit on this one. We'll talk about that. I don't think it's horrible, but it's certainly not great. So, Duels of Pyroxene, if you don't know, it is the next Duelist pack. In the OCG, it'll be Legendary Duels for us in the TCG, and this is the Earth-based one. They've been doing these by attribute. The one before this is Water, the one before that was Wind. Technically, the one before that was Dark, even though we couldn't even tell that we were actually on that pattern yet at the time. But the three archetypes that we see support here and characters is firstly Leo and his Morphtronic cards. We get a new Power Tool Dragon, but other than that, the Morphtronic stuff seems okay. Nothing crazy. You have your Scannon, your Telephon. Gadget Gamer is an interesting card because it does search any level 1 machine in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Jet Synchron just came off the ban list, so there's some interesting things this card can do. Earphon is somewhat of a generic synchro monster, though it's not really doing a ton. It just can kind of make itself a tuner, which is cool. This is the really main generic card for the Morphtronic stuff. When it's summoned, it can target 3 equip spells from deck or grave. Not target them, but equip it to itself. And then during the main phase, you can send one of your equipped spells to target an effect monster on the field, change its battle position, or negate its effects until the end of the turn. Perfectly fine. Pretty solid card overall, I would say, especially for stuff like Infernobles. I've talked to somebody who plays Infernobles, and they've said that this card actually does come up because the deck does make level 9s pretty consistently. The spell's fine. The equip spell would be better. This could have been better. If it gave the Braver Dragon an extra interruption, it'd be way better, but unfortunately it just makes you choose between like a pop or a negate for him. Unfortunately, you can't do both. Then you get to Ishizu's card. She's the next character. Finally, Ishizu actually gets like a somewhat cohesive archetype. They get some pretty cool cards here with Keldo, Mudora, and Kelbeck. These are the 3 big ones. Kelbeck's kind of just a straight-up hand trap. Mudora and Keldo are actually just cool because in grave or on field, they're quick effects to banish themselves, to like shuffle at least 3 cards from either graveyard back into the deck. That is actually a very good effect in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But their first effects are more centered around Earth Fairy stuff, potentially getting access to Gravekeeper cards, having some synergy there. Speaking of which, we have this new card. It can add a Gravekeeper's monster or an Earth Fairy fairly easily from deck to hand, which is cool, but you have to get it set up. It's a little slow. It's a trap card. These traps are not very good. And then you move to the Amazonas support. For the Amazonas stuff, they have weird pendulum monsters that are new, but realistically, the way I feel about these is that hardly anything here is actually doing anything helpful to the archetype. The archetype needed a legit win condition and a legit good payoff for the engine they had. They already had a solid engine. This stuff didn't really capitalize on it too well. I do think Warrior Chief is a really good extender for them, but that's not always enough, you know? Shaman's a decent extender, and other than that, I think literally like all 3 of the fusions are like not that great because they either require too much for you to like get into them, and also their payoff just isn't nearly as good. They do get a quick play fusion, but it fuses from hand and field, so if it's not fusing from grave or deck, it honestly just isn't as good, unfortunately. So this one kind of is okay, but like, again, they don't have a really good payoff fusion monster to even go into. So that's pretty much everything that's coming in the set as far as the new stuff. The bigger overall thing I want to focus on here is this. In sets like this, where it is kind of very few things that you even are offering to players as far as trying to sell the set, you kind of have to capitalize on it. When you look at a core set's going to have new generic cards for competitive players. There's going to be new archetypes. Those could apply to casual, competitive, or rogue players, whatever you're looking at. And there's going to be support for older archetypes, so there's almost always something in every core set for any duelist, because it just has such good variation on everything. Then you get to sets like this, and even more so for stuff like structure decks. But especially since they've cut down from 5 or 6 duelists down to 3 duelists in every pack, they have to capitalize on it because that's only 3 different opportunities for you to kind of connect with a player. So that means if you don't care about Morphtronics or the cards that are coming in that support generically, the Ishizu cards or the Earth Fairy stuff that it's supporting, or the Amazonas support, then it doesn't matter. And then even more so when you don't even really do well at making that support really help those decks that well, even more so. Because you could be an Amazoness fan, I'm an Amazoness fan, and I'm honestly not that interested in this support because it's just not good enough. It's not doing enough for the deck to the point where I'm like, I really want to build Amazoness again. This is awesome. What an awesome wave of support. It's like, oh, I love Amazoness. There's 2 good extenders, but the deck still doesn't have a great win condition at all. Just awful. So that's kind of where I land with it. Overall in the set, I just feel like they've missed the mark overall, and I just feel like quality compared to the last 2 specifically, because I thought we were on such a good path. Duelists of the Whirlwind was actually so good. You had Baronne de Fleur as a generic awesome card. I know we have the Power Tool Braver Dragon, but that's not a generically applicable to any synchro strategy kind of card. It has to be a deck that plays equips already. That's very few and far between. Outside of Infernoble, I'm not exactly sure what decks want to be playing equips. Maybe like Goki, just because they, play a Sold. But other than that, Goki doesn't really make synchros all that often. So, again, doesn't really work as well as you think. On top of that, Lyraless got their support. Support was really good, and it ended up being a tier 1 deck with Tri-Brigade. And then Speedroids. Speedroids are a respectable rogue deck nowadays. You have to respect them because they actually do some pretty powerful things. So I felt like they were really successful in this pack at just being more relevant. So much of the path, the few legendary duels prior to the Wind one were just not just irrelevant characters. Not that it was irrelevant characters. They just made completely irrelevant support as if you were a competitive player. So they just completely blocked out that entire basis of player from ever being interested in buying that product. But this one kind of rejuvenated that because a lot of people, competitive players, were interested in this pack. The new one that's about to drop in the next couple weeks here, less than a month, is the Water one. It may not be as competitively viable as the Wind one, but I think the Marine Cess support makes them a legit, solid, playable rogue deck, if not maybe even tier 2. We know Sharks are a cool rogue deck. They get awesome support. Not only that, but 2 of their Shark cards just become really good water extenders. So whether you're playing Atlantean Mermail or even Marine Cess, I'm planning on testing those cards in Marine Cess or whatever other good water deck, those just become really solid engine cards for that. So that's generically splashable to the entire attribute. And you also have the Umi support. That's your more legacy stuff, almost more on base with the Ishizu support. It's not crazy, but he was a guy who his support was always, he's gotten a good amount of support, but you were like, his deck doesn't do anything decent. Now it actually does. He actually has plays. So at the end of the day, I feel like there are a couple of cards, the Power Tool Braver, but again, it's not as generic as you'd want it to be because it has to be in a deck with equips. You could argue Gadget Gamer is okay because it searches any level 1 machine, but that is still really specific. I don't think that's generically strong enough. I do think Ishizu's cards could be interesting because they generically banish any 3 or shuffle any 3 cards from grave back in at quick speed. So these could just be good send targets off something like Shooting Riser that some decks take advantage of. Keldo is a hand trap, but it is a little bit specific as well. So it's just, I don't know. You look up and down this set and I struggle to find where I'm really whoa. Because even in the Water one, you're whoa, Marine Cess, that's solid. Whoa, these couple of Shark cards are just one, good for Sharks, but also really splashable. And before that, the Lyraless stuff, immediately meta, as well as Baronne de Fleur splashed in multiple meta decks. There was something in every set. I'm not sure there's anything in this set where you say that at all. And so because of that, I just feel like they missed it. They missed the mark. Well, like I was saying earlier, I feel like structure decks feel this even harder, where they have to make a structure deck good because, let's be honest, the reprints in structure deck, there's maybe 1 or 2 reprint cards that people actually care about. You know what I mean? It's expensive cards that are getting low rarity reprints. That's awesome, right? But that's not an entire reason to buy a structure deck. If they make the support not worth it in a structure deck, nobody will buy it. So it's there's only one thing. At least in this set, it's oh, Amazoness. If I don't like Amazoness, Morphtronic. If I don't like Morphtronic, maybe I really love the Shizu as a character, and I'm excited to build her deck. It gives you a few more chances, but it's still not great. And I just feel like they didn't capitalize as well as they could have, especially since this was Earth. By the way, Earth had the best opportunity to be the best competitively out of all of these because just so many more good Earth archetypes than Water, Fire, and Wind. So yeah, I'm surprised they missed the mark so much harder on this one than the last two. Hopefully, the next one will end up being fire-based, and hopefully, again, because the water and wind ones were great as underdeveloped attributes, fire one, again, the most underdeveloped attribute like in the game, pretty much. Hopefully, they'll come through and they'll actually give that one kind of the same treatment as the water and wind. So overall, I just feel like they kind of just dropped the ball on it. I think it's just so mediocre, and the last two had been so good. Hopefully they get back on track with the fire one, but we'll obviously see. There's no guarantees. I'll obviously keep you updated news-wise on that, but yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to rant about today. I just think this set's going to be not that exciting by the time it comes around. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on Duelist Pack, Duelists of Pyroxene. Just a little rant video. Sorry if I ran it a little bit too long for you, but I'm out of here. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you. Subscribe if you haven't. You want to see more stuff from me down the line. And yeah, peace.